Hi, everybody, and welcome to the $1 Billion Banker podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Perrone, and today I have with me Ernesto Cullari. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. We've known each other for a while, but we haven't really seen each other in years, so I'm excited to be here with you.
It's been a while, and I've been following you, and actually, how we got back in touch is a great story. First, I want to introduce you. Ernesto is a writer. He's a commercial photographer and a commercial director. He's also the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Cullari and Wardell, which is an amazing company that's pioneering in the field of geofencing, which he's going to tell us all about today if you haven't heard of that term. But how we got back in touch was I was reading your editorial in the Tri-City News. And for those of you that are familiar with the Tri-City News, it's a very unfiltered, unapologetic media source that you can use that really shows all different perspectives of the editors and the people that are reading and the audience. So it's a very cool place to go to just kind of hear different perspectives. So I love what your editorials are telling us. It's a great message you have. So tell us about your background and who you are.
Sure. Well, I'll go back to our to the Tri-City News.
Yeah, please do.
So one of the interesting things about the Tri-City News, it is the New York Times wrote an article about us, and I've been running for that paper once a week for I think the last 16 years. And it is a very far left newspaper, and I write the very far right, which I consider normal column. You know, and I think I actually speak for most Americans if they were to open up their mouth and say what they really think, right? I think that I speak for them. But the paper provides an audience to all the diverse groups that live in Asbury Park. And I think, and in the Tri-City, meaning coastal Monmouth County. The one view I think is not yet represented might be, say, the Latino, because there are diverse Latino voices.
Sure.
But I think for the most part, in terms of who lives in Asbury Park, I think that the paper represents, if you could look at Asbury Park as the center of the world for cultural Monmouth County, which there's an argument to be made for that. The paper represents all these diverse voices.
I love that.
Plus the business class, which, you know, make up the advertisers in the Tri-City News. So after reading one of my articles, you reached out to me and I was like, oh, this should be cool because I haven't seen you in such a while. And I'm such a controversial person, not to me, but according to others. I appear to be a controversial person. But I actually think I'm a controversial person because the voices are silenced in the mainstream media. And I'll give you an example. Zuckerberg just came out with an interview where he said that the Biden-Harris campaign had silenced him during the last election cycle because they want to control the narrative. And you know, I don't care what side of the aisle that you're on, but we should be able to battle it out in the Coliseum of ideas.
Sure.
And that I think is fair. And for Zuckerberg to come out and admit, like, hey, we favored one side, that was enough. The margin of error, you know, the margin of winners and losers for this last campaign was very narrow, as it might be for this one. I suspect that people are in for a rude surprise or a big surprise because Trump is going to have one of the biggest victories since Reagan. And it's not because I'm cheerleading for Trump. I think it's because people are not informed. People are insulted that Harris is not out there in front, you know, saying what she believes in, saying why she's the same and or different than Biden and the same and or different in some ways as Trump. And since she's not making that argument, fair people who are not, I'm not considering myself fair because I have a strong opinion. But fair-minded people are going to be like, I don't want to support someone who won't earn my vote.
Right. So, no, that's a good point. You know, I follow Patrick Bet-David. Do you follow Patrick Bet-David?
Yeah.
And so he's got his view is very far right as well, I would say. But he's got Chris Cuomo now and Don Lemon, I believe, as two of the people on Valuetainment, which it kind of reminds me of the Tri-City News, right? It's like we need to get comfortable all being in one space and expressing our collective opinion and then discussing in a normal way why we're disagreeing, right? And that's just like anything in business, right? I'm sure you would agree, right? You know, if you go to your business partner and you guys have a disagreement on things, you have to find a way to talk through it as opposed to just Ernesto's crazy. Like, I don't even know what he's thinking. How could he possibly be thinking that, right? So I love that the forum creates that level of communication. And sometimes controversy will spawn a good debate. So how did you get involved in the Tri-City? How did that happen for you?
So I graduated college in 2001 from Ithaca. So molecular biology, microbiology, philosophy, and Spanish. And I had already been writing through college. And, so I wrote scientific papers because that's what you have to do to graduate with a degree in biology.
Sure.
And to have a minor in philosophy, you have to write philosophical papers. So I was friends with Dan Jacobson, and, Asbury Park at 20 years ago was a very small place.
Oh, yeah.
Very is a city, but it's a very small, not a lot of people lived there as they do now.
Sure.
Right. So Tom DeSeno at the time was writing the column, and who's an area attorney. And I guess he wanted to go on and write for Fox News, and I would substitute write for him when he was on vacation or something like that. So about 16 years ago, they asked me, hey, how would you like to write a weekly column? And I was like, sure. So by the way, this is the longest I've ever had a job. I've never had a job for 16 years.
Well, we'll just let you say what you want to say and be who you want to be. It's incredible how long you could be somewhere.
And think about it, 16 years, once a week, you have to be consistent about, you find out what you believe and what you don't believe. And I'm the kind of editorial writer that supports, sometimes I'll write freeform without any support for my beliefs.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's important to sort of download your thoughts and theories. But most of the time when I write an article, it's supported by sources. I'll say, I believe this because of this.
Right.
I'll say I'm offended because of this, and here's the reason why. And I source where my information is coming from. So yeah, they asked me about 16 years ago, and then I've been writing ever since.
Wow.
And yeah, and I both love it and I hate it. I hate that I seem, in most editorials, I seem to be the only one who could defend consistently their beliefs. There has never been a writer in the Tri-City News, including Dan Jacobson, who can consistently articulate what he believes.
I was going to ask you, and I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but is there anything that you look back on after 16 years and say, I'm not sure if I agree with that perspective of mine anymore?
Maybe on the Iraq War.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've since, you just come over time to realize that as an American, we're fighting in wars that there's no reason for the war in Afghanistan to last as long as it did. And perhaps even the Iraq War, we should have gone earlier when they tried to. Most people don't know, but Saddam Hussein had a plot to kill George Bush Sr.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't know about that. And I would have went in right away. I would said, we're going to take care of you then. And then it became a war about something else.
Right.
So,
well,
but
everything's kind of clearer in hindsight sometimes, and it's okay for your opinion to evolve. I would assume you feel that way as an editor.
Yeah. So I'm less likely to think we should intervene. As a country, we have so many young women and men that have lost their lives or lost their livelihoods, lost their mental health, lost their legacy because they're busy fighting a war that just never ends.
That maybe we shouldn't be fighting. Yeah. And I'm sure, I'm sure a lot of people feel like that out there too. And it's a great perspective to have. And so now you're also, we said in the beginning, a photographer, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your career in that space? What came first? Were you an editor and then became a photographer?
Politics came first. So in 2012, I ran for U.S. Congress.
Okay.
The Monmouth County GOP came to me. It was never my idea. They're like, how would you like to run for Congress? And I can see why they asked me. I mean, week after week, I would pick on Frank Pallone.
Yes, I remember that.
He is exactly why business people and not lawyers should be in politics. He's what I would call a loser. He's never had a real job. He went from a privileged background into politics, law, and then politics. And when I say law, he practiced law maybe 2, 3, 4 years, and then and then got into politics. Never had an adult job. So he doesn't know the stress of what you know. He doesn't know the stress of what I would know about, simply, am I providing a value to someone? And am I doing it in a way that benefits them first? And then I also reap the benefits because of that. government thinks like, hey, it's all ours. It belongs to us. We're your partner, not my partner. You know?
Well, the tax code would say they are, right? When they're taking 50% of what you earn.
100%. So I got into politics, and then we needed a photographer to do my campaign headshots. And then I started looking at all this, and you know, I started looking at all these photographers, their work. I was like, oh, this is all awful. So I had no idea how to take a photograph at the time, but I was like, I imagine it should be something like this. So I took a photograph, I turned the camera around and handed it to my assistant. I said, take a picture of me on this setting. And then poof, I was like, oh, okay, maybe if it doesn't work out in politics.
Yeah, I'm kind of good at this.
Which it didn't, it didn't work out. And then Hint Beauty, which is a vegan, cruelty-free makeup company, said, hey, we like what you're doing on Instagram. How'd you like to do some photography for us? So then dozen beauty brands later, and fast forward to 2015, then I left. My day job was in medicine, so I was a surgical med rep working in the OR, and I left that, and then did photography, advertising, and then COVID hit, and we lost pretty much all of our clients. We had clients as far away as Japan. They were like, sorry.
So before it was geofencing, what was
it was
Cullari and
mainly
Wardell?
Commercial photography, commercial directing.
Okay.
And social media marketing.
And then COVID came.
COVID came, and laundromats were an essential business. And my buddy who owned a laundromat, he said, you should learn geofencing because, you know, we need to get people back into coming out to retail places. So geofencing, for people who don't know, it's
yes, I was going to say, what is geofencing?
Yeah, so it's the use of satellites to draw virtual fences around buildings.
Okay.
And then when people walk in there with their smartwatch or a smart device like a smartphone, we capture that device, we anonymize that device so we don't know who you are, but we can make certain inferences about you because you walked into a Mercedes dealership, or to a dentist, or a doctor, or an Italian restaurant, or a laundromat.
Now, do you know, are you able to assess this information before someone decides to put a retail store somewhere and say, here's the geofencing data?
We do it every day.
Okay.
Yeah, we do a foot traffic study every day with a satellite to determine who's there, what demographics, where they come from how far away they come. So that's kind of what makes us unique in the geofencing world also, is that we do a lot of location intelligence before we even engage in a campaign. So we use satellites to capture smartphones, anonymize those devices, and then based on the inferences that we can draw based on your location, if you're on a marina, we know we can sell you another boat, right? So we capture your device, and then we bid for ad space on your phone. It could be in the weather app, it could be on Fox News, it could be on ESPN, Major League Baseball, it could be on the Bible app, whatever.
So the companies that you're working with are the ones that are doing the advertising or the bidding to advertise to those people in the geofencing
for
market.
all the brands, small businesses, big businesses. Like, we don't have Burger King, but Burger King did this to McDonald's. So when people went to McDonald's, Burger King would send them an ad for like a 10-cent Whopper, and or is it Big Mac? I forget.
Oh, that's an interesting.
I forget what they have.
Yeah,
but
Burger King has the Whopper. Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, you got it right.
So Burger King would send you an ad to get like a 10-cent burger from them.
Interesting.
And then, but the great thing about geofencing is when you come to our store, one of our many stores, the satellite pings us and tells us that a new visit has taken place. So it's a GPS satellite verified visit. So between Barbara and I, we do 5,000 visits a month across the US, Canada, Australia, and soon to be Jamaica.
So that's amazing. Let me just break this down real quick. So if let's say I'm a construction company and I have a local showroom, who would I be looking for to bid? Am I bidding on people that are walking through tile stores and people that are going to Home Depot, or what would your advice be for me?
So I would have you tell me who your customer is, who your main client is.
Okay.
We would then do a personality profile.
Okay.
So where physically do these people go? Not just this store, not just that store. Where else do they go? So then we would do precise geofences where I take a pen, I draw on a map a computer, computer pen, computer map.
Right.
We draw locations, and then that's one set of data. The second set of data is we would look at their banking and credit sort of situation. And we would take the same geographical data and we would mix it with demographic data and economic data.
Wow.
So it's usually two tactics we run. We find out who your person is and where they go. We find out who your person is and how they already spend money, known ways they spend money, and we target everyone like them.
So is this something that you would offer in addition or suggest in addition to a social media strategy or a Google SEO strategy, or this is something that would kind of replace the two?
I'm a maximalist. I believe do everything.
Okay.
Like do try to, even except for every door direct, because it's just sadly, mail is so expensive. Pieces of paper are so expensive. But in terms of, I think you should have a social media presence. I think you should have a Google presence. But the reason why geofencing is so effective, it's outside of these walled gardens that are so expensive. You're basically making Mark Zuckerberg very wealthy. And you're basically making the people at Alphabet very wealthy. They control that landscape. Geofencing is, we're advertising in apps and on the open web, and it's true democratization of advertising. And because your niche is different than my niche, we're not bidding against each other, because the makeup of my customer is, or client, is different than the makeup of yours. They do business at different times of the day. The availability of ads on their phone varies. So the amount of time they spend on their device varies. So it's more democratic, whereas you have limited space on Facebook. And if you notice your Facebook right now, they basically send you ads for all the same stuff. I get the same watches, the same Stetson, ad.
You must notice that stuff like crazy, knowing that. So is it kind of like with geofencing, there's no in between, there's no Google, there's no Facebook, it's just you getting direct to the customer, so to speak?
You're speaking directly to your market. And what I love best is that we can't really be censored. Whereas on Facebook, your ads could be censored. On Google, your ads could be censored. And if you're a political person, if you're a political candidate, there's so much, it's just so much harassment to get an ad out. So it's such a painful process. So
do you help or work with political candidates, being that that's kind of your background?
We don't, and I'll give you a real quick story. I actually reached out to someone who has access to Trump, and I was like, listen, I can, I'm not even making this up, we could be very impactful in all these swing states, and our technology alone could tilt this election thousands. I'm already doing it in retail. I can move 5,000 votes.
Right. It transcends, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and specifically because we're not under the control of Facebook and Google, and we're able to place ads where we know voters are, and we have access to that data. But no, we're not. And I was almost hesitant in mentioning this because I don't want Democrats to know what I know, and Barb what we know. But this is super powerful. And the great thing is there are probably consultants that you could pay $10,000 a month that do political campaigns, and they're really not going to focus the resources on something like this because it's so what they would consider niche, but it could be impactful for politics in the same way it's impactful for small businesses and big businesses like Chipotle and Burger King. And Chipotle, by the way, I don't remember her name, and I really should find out who she is. Right. One of their VPs during COVID was like, you know what? Drive pickup is like should be a big part of our business. And she increased that part of their business by 30%. Really, really, she's a hero of retail. But now you have their CEO just left to be CEO of Starbucks, I believe. But this woman, whoever it was at Chipotle, I mean, she's responsible for how much they've grown in recent years. Right.
Without having a drive through, right? Right. So go on. What did she say? She was looking for.
So she needed to move the needle because she realized that you can't be dining indoors. So what do? You need curbside pickup. And she really pioneered that for Chipotle. So it is a very powerful technology for someone like myself who's very opinionated, who can't hold down a normal job because I get fired. As it is, people contact the Tri-City News they're like, you got to get rid of this guy. You know, why do you give him a platform?
$1 billion banker podcast is going to be
right
at risk now. No. Well, look, I think that's the thing that's interesting is like you need to hear all perspectives.
Yes.
I think I'm an advocate for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone should be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but so she reached out to you. She pioneered this kind of concept. Did she use geofencing, or was she trying to kind of engage you in regards to using it?
So if we're talking about the VP at Chipotle, I only read an article about her.
Okay.
So
interesting.
She did this, and as I was mastering what we do, we use different tools than what she had used.
Okay.
Because we actually use location intelligence first, and as far as I know, we're one of the only agencies that do what we do.
Okay.
In that we do foot traffic studies first, and these technologies are not inherent to what you would call a demand side platform. So demand side platform is like if you want to take out an ad, or if you're an agency, and you want to run ads yourself, you need to run them on a demand side platform. So demand side is where you can upload your ads and then bid across a myriad of places to place your ads. So, but we're different.
Okay.
Before we use a demand side platform, we use what you might use in commercial real estate to pinpoint different locations, find out who lives there, who travels there, how many devices are available there, what kind of local market can support this location.
Okay.
And that's what makes us different, is that we do this with a basket of technologies to understand what's occurring at this Chipotle or that Burger King or this marina or this jewelry store or this laundromat. Because we actually started in laundry first, became one of the largest advertisers for laundry in the United States, Canada, and Australia, and then ventured out into other aspects.
Now, what if because I'm hearing like a bunch of different, like more than I would have known about this. And so when you start explaining it, it's becoming simpler to understand. But what if I don't have a physical location and I'm interested in using geofencing? It would still apply, right?
Yeah, we would start with the radius once again, and we would start, let's say, I live in Asbury Park.
Yeah.
But let's say we want to meet, say we want to reach people in Rumson or say Lakewood, New Jersey, right? Two different, distinctly different groups of people. But we don't want to drive them to a place, but we know that people that live in these areas can benefit from, say, childcare or tutoring or equestrian lessons, whatever it is, or divorce attorneys.
Right.
So we can use location data combined with demographic data and keyword, which is better than Google, because Google's like search intent doesn't really show buyer intent, but what the things that you read, the articles you read we're able to track articles, we're able to track contextual words. So we would mix that with location data and drive it to a website or a landing page rather than a location.
Okay.
So what's most important to understand about geofencing and location-based, behavioral-based advertising is that location is indicative of what you can do as a consumer. Now, think about this. I look at watches. I'll give you a better example. So I sell all the time, and I look at Beneteaus that are, $500,000, right? So I charter a boat instead of buy one. But just because I'm searching for Beneteaus doesn't mean I can or will buy one. However, if I'm in a Beneteau marina, a marina that sells Beneteaus, I am going to buy one of those boats. And therefore, if we're working with a competing yacht company or a competing marina, you can then send ads to my device. And then when I show up or fill out a form, it's a conversion. Location is indicative of what you can do. Search is not. Search is fantasy island. Okay. Being in a location is reality. Same thing with real estate. We've done ads for people that have $5 million or more properties, right? So we're doing it for the agent and or the broker, and we're targeting people that maybe go into open houses similar to this one in the last 120 days. Interesting. So, you can then lead those people to a landing page for this home that you're trying to sell. The funny thing about real estate is that the agents are not spending money as Like they're really not promoting properties, and I'm talking about $5 million homes. You know, 5 million and up.
Well, how do you think agents should? Because agents have kind of been like into this whole every door direct mail stuff for a while. I'm constantly still getting postcards. Do you think you said before? I think you don't think that that's the most effective.
It's a total waste of money.
Okay,
it's a total waste of money.
So, what would your advice be for realtors today for marketing?
So, I think geofencing should be part of what you do.
Okay,
it should be one of the tools in your toolbox. You can look at people who are applying for mortgages. You could look at people who have been to an open house. You can look at people's banking data from, and then you can start targeting them in a certain radius and advertising a property. So I'm not really sure why it is. I don't know the ecosystem of that business. It's not really as an agency. It's how we participate with you is you educate us on your language. You educate us on your client, what the buyer's habits would be, right? Before leading up to. Yes. I think major banks use these types of algorithms too to indicate. Okay. So we take that same kind of information from you, and then we build a campaign in that image. Gotcha. And then, but real estate agents should definitely be using this as part of what they do, and particularly for homes that are more expensive, because at least you'll get your return on investment. And these are modest ad spends, and these are, for, I don't know what's the commission on a $5 million home today? Yeah, it's probably 4 or 5%, I'd say, on average of the purchase price. So it's substantial. So if you spent let's say you spent on the high side $6,000 marketing a home, you're going to make your money back. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see a lot of agents doing, photography, video, drone footage. And then so now you're saying like take that to the next level and have this kind of show up as like a clickbait, so to speak, in people's browsers as they're searching. So this is the problem of all advertising. You can have, and this is the problem with social media. Okay. You can have perfect content, but if you don't hand deliver it to your bespoke audience, it's all pointless. Right, because you could have an amazing Instagram page with 300 followers, and you have this great $800 video made. Oh, fantastic stuff they're doing in real estate photography and drone photography. But if you're not hand delivering it to a consumer that can purchase your product, then it's useless. And geofencing is so precise that you're never missing. You're not, your ad impressions are not spent on the wrong person. They're only spent on the right person. So, and there are companies out there that are heavily invested in social media content, and we can repurpose that content and put it on the open web. We could put it on a connected TV or a smart TV ad, and still reach those people. And so this would be more targeted than like promoting a post on Instagram or Facebook, would you say? It is 90% more effective. Because you're the only thing you could do demographics and geography, right? When you're selecting where to go. So you're selecting an age group and you're selecting an area, but you can't select the habits of the people that you're looking to market to. Right. So one of the challenging things about relying only on Facebook or Google is that the pool of available ads in real estate on Facebook and Google is more limited than the open web. And the data that you're using is the data that everybody else is using who's also selling real estate or mortgages in this local market. Whereas with geofencing, people are going to open their phone right now. They're going to be like, oh, coffee place near me, or how do I find that deli even though I live in this town? I forget what street it's on. When you do that, you're opening your entire phone up for location-based marketing. But because location is more indicative of future behavior than your search terms on Facebook, Google, or anything else, we know that this is closer to the point of sale than any other form. Everything else is higher up. If you want to use a funnel, like marketers talk about a marketing or advertising funnel, your Facebook and Google, they're more up here. But when you use geofencing, and in some cases contextual, which is when you're looking at people who are reading certain articles with certain information, it's much closer to the point of sale than it is if you're just using Facebook or Google. I do think they're beneficial. One of the modes of advertising that we use is we're on podcasts. We have an agent that books us on 16 podcasts, I believe,
I think you said every 3 months. Yeah.
So that is long form. It's tons of information, and it dominates. If you're to Google my name, it's probably 50 pages of Google that I'm on. But that's because we're producing content that is being consumed out there. So yeah, we're on Google. We're not paying for placement. It's all organic.
Right.
And so there are different ways to use these tools. Same thing with Facebook. I use it very limited, mostly to torture people who have different political views than me. But I use Instagram. You know, people look up my Instagram. They're like, oh, this guy knows content. You know, this guy knows geofencing, and they get it because I show it.
Right. Are you able to drive a following to, let's say, a podcast or a social network? Is there ways where someone could sit down with you and say, hey, I'm an influencer, or I'm a local realtor, and I want to drive more people to my podcast, to the things that I'm doing online? Because
you can take, say we took a 15-second clip of this podcast interview. We can then so we posted it. It's an organic post. It's a non-paid post.
Right.
It's got likes. It's got comments. We can then repurpose that in a display ad on the open web. So it's showing all your likes and comments. When they see it, it looks like an editorial, or it looks like native ads look like they belong. Right. So they see it. It looks like a native Facebook post. And we can then repurpose that on the open web. So people already see that it has all this engagement. They click on it, and it can bring you back to a Facebook page for which they can, or a YouTube channel for which they can subscribe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think a marketing budget looks like for a small business owner in today's world? Because, you know, I said this the other day, like every new form of marketing doesn't do away with the old form, right? Unless we're talking about mail, which many people might think is not really relevant. Some might say they think mail actually stands out now in all the noise, but I do like magazine advertisements because I love the fact that people keep them, they read them, they put them on their table. But when you think about all of the different things people need to do to market today, what do you think a realistic budget is for a small business?
So we got our start in laundromats. Laundromats are they're like the little town square of every neighborhood, you know? Right. So think about this. You have nieces, nephews, kids. They're playing soccer. They're in gymnastics. They're in football.
Right.
Those parents need to take their, it would take you, I don't even know how people do it with kids. You're going to live as the laundry lady or the laundry man in your family because of all these kids. So laundromats, instead of taking 3 days to do laundry or 5 days, or doing laundry every single day in your house, you take it all to a laundromat, you get it done in under an hour. So we started off doing laundromats, and we became one of the largest advertisers in the United States, Canada, and Australia for laundromats. And for a local laundromat, on $1,000 ad spend, you can drive 50 new people to your laundromat every month. Wow. So let's scale it up. Mercedes dealership. So you sell one, say we sent you 10 or 11, which is probably more realistic for a local Mercedes dealership. Right. The value of that client over the next 3 years for that lease and for service and for, you know, these a lot of these Mercedes have low profile tires. They're like, I don't know, I forget, $4,000 if you have to replace all the time. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's crazy. But anyway. Expensive. Yeah. So the value of that customer, if we're sending you 11 clients a month, I mean, you're making your money back on $1,000 ad spend. You just have to look at okay, so from the day the customer comes to me, how long will that sales cycle be? But the return will be there because there needs to be some level of a longer term commitment. Does someone have to sign a contract with you guys? We generally have 6 or 7 months. It's actually a 7-month contract because of the onboarding process. Okay. It takes a month. Okay. So but the average ad spend we start with any client is $1,000, and there's a reason for that. It's because we're not reaching everyone. We're reaching the someone that you're trying to speak to, right? And we're doing it in a very defined radius, right? So if you look at the placement of most Mercedes dealerships, at least in Monmouth County, they're in the neighborhoods for which people drive Mercedes. They're very close to, right? I think there's one in Fairhaven, so it's super close to Middletown. Wardell, Red Bank, Rumson,
Right.
you know, so let's say we drew our radius out to 10 miles and we had a $1,500 budget.
Right.
Still, it's insane. You know,
Sure.
Your return on investment for just one client far exceeds what you paid for that.
Now, what businesses predominantly, you're mentioning the car business, but what businesses are your key focuses that, you know, you're like, hey, you have to, so if you have a laundromat, I hear like a car dealership, but what other businesses are really big targets for you?
We have private aviation.
Okay.
We've done real estate rentals. So if you have inventory that needs to, and you're not, which is hard to imagine if you have inventory and you don't have people renting, it's insane because of all the people that moved down here since COVID.
Oh yeah.
We did Electrico Mezcal, which is from Oaxaca.
Oh yeah.
And we've done tastings for that. So it's all different, you know, divorce attorneys, criminal attorneys. It's
just to get that clientele that, I mean, they're searching, they're looking,
right.
You're seeing the behavior. So anyone that owns a local business should really consider doing some kind of a consultation like this. If you're a business owner and you're listening, definitely reach out. We could follow you on Instagram. Obviously, you have a great following on Instagram.
Thank you.
Did that come from your geofencing capabilities or your editorials? How did you build that?
So I've had my Instagram since 2012.
Okay.
And there was a time where you were able to do a lot of engagement on Instagram. Now, if you're on your phone and you follow 10, 15 people, Instagram will stop you from following people.
Really?
So there was a time where you could build an organic following. That time no longer exists. I have 5,000 LinkedIn, 5,000 Facebook, and 40 some odd thousand Instagram followers. They're all organic. They're all in niche. But in order for you to reach your audience on any of these platforms, you have to pay. That was not always the case.
Right.
So now if you want to reach any of your followers beyond, say, the same 120 people that engage with you every day, you have to pay to significantly reach any of them. And I'm just talking about your own followers, let alone beyond that.
Right. Just for them to be seeing what you're posting consistently.
Yes.
Do you, I mean, you started as like photography, digital media, social media. Yep. What advice do you have for listeners on social media today?
I would say,
do you have an hour?
I would say that it's fantasy land. You know, there is some use to it and utility to it, mainly for what it was originally intended to socialize with your family and friends. I would say, oddly, because I get so much hate from for my political beliefs, it actually enhances my business, because anytime I post a business post now, it appears, because the algorithm is stoked when you put negative feedback. Negative feedback is positive biofeedback on social media. Right. It's like the Madonna principle. I don't care if you hate me or love me, just talk about me.
Right.
Well, that
no press is bad press kind of a concept. So
I actually post political things and business things on my own Facebook, and it just enhances my natural reach. So people don't realize that.
Interesting.
But my advice would be find other avenues.
Okay.
Find other avenues to
podcasting being one of them. I think.
Podcasting, we're not even dipping the toe in yet for the potential of podcasts. One, we happen to be sitting in a teched out studio, right? So me and my partner just built out one, and you and I are light years ahead, because everyone else is still stuck in audio. Audio is pretty effective, but it's nowhere near what the future is going to be for content creation. And we were speaking earlier, if you can't do long form content, you're just not going to be you're not going to be a thought leader in your space. And video, because it takes so much work to make this look good and sound proper and professional, not everyone is going to make this leap. So we're absolutely years ahead, you and I, of what other people are doing.
Right. And that's when, even with people that have been doing it for a long time as well.
Yes.
You know, so it's interesting. I think it's I was talking to the studio here about that, how, you know, they have a big educational component to what they do as well. And, you know, I've been in the sales, mortgage, finance, real estate industry for a long time. And when you think about, and you've worked with plenty of realtors as well, I believe, at least in the photography world. I see some of them on your
Mhm.
Instagram. But when you think about all the things in the way of executing on a podcast or
Mhm.
executing on a digital media strategy or a
Mhm.
marketing strategy, it would just be great if there was one place where you could teach like the world of selling and marketing today, right?
Yes.
Like, come take this training course and learn about how to do this today. We have your
Right.
geofencing guy, we have your podcast person, we have your digital media, and kind of packaging that all up in one place for people to access, and an affordable way too.
Yes.
Is the hard part, because people just don't know where to go. They don't know what to start with. Who does my edits? Who does my, how do
Right.
I get a mic? What does it look like? What's the lighting? It's too much. There's too many things in the way, too many steps.
I think a kid would be better off probably paying the people here
Mhm.
than going to college for it.
Mm-hmm.
In college,
Yeah.
I mean, Ithaca, where I went, was 30,000 a year. When I went, it's probably 60 something now, right?
Yeah.
So you can better spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
It won't even cost you that to take, a year
Mhm.
worth of lessons here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or somewhere else.
Yeah.
But you're not going to learn in college. You have to learn in a place where they actually do it for a living.
Right. Absolutely.
So
no, there's something to be said about, I think a lot of this, when I look at the investment in marketing and the time that you spend in that space,
Mhm.
it's like you're giving yourself an education, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of it that's kind of like, try it out and test it, see how it goes. And it's worth the investment, because you're investing in yourself, when you're anything marketing related, right? You're investing in yourself and in your business, and constantly adapting to the new ways to do it. Some people don't even know. Like,
Mhm.
how many people do you talk to that are like, what's geofencing, when you tell them what you're doing?
Even people in advertising have a hard time wrapping their head around it.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many nuances to it. But yeah, most people don't know what geofencing is, which is why we do long forms
Content
of
like this.
education and content,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people, no matter how many times you explain it, need to hear it again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to know that, some of the questions you were asking me, there are some novel ways to apply geofencing.
Right.
We even had a church reach out to us and ask
Oh, wow.
us if we could use this to help people realize that their church exists.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, yeah, sure. So we came up with a couple targets for them. What would be useful?
Mm-hmm.
What would be impactful for them? But like I said, private aviation,
Mhm.
it's like anytime you need to find an audience and you need to speak to them directly without a go-between,
Mm-hmm.
geofencing is for you. We
Right.
still do believe that Facebook has its utility, LinkedIn has its utility, Google has its utility,
Mm-hmm.
but I prefer something that benefits me, the one who needs to speak to an audience, than enriching the metas and the
Mhm.
alphabets of the world.
No, that's actually a really good point. And I'm curious, as you were talking, what are your thoughts about just brick and mortar in general in today's world? Obviously, for some businesses, like if you're McDonald's, you need to have a brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
But you see banks moving away from, they just have like the ATM, you roll up and you do
Sure.
everything like that. Do you think there's still a big relevance based on the consumer behavior that you're looking at all the time?
Any service requires, we desire to speak to a person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is why AI is evolving as fast as it is, because
Mhm.
if you can't provide an expert on hand,
Mm-hmm.
you might as well teach a machine to tell a person what they need to know. But people need people,
Mm-hmm.
and that is why retail exists, because
Yeah.
you can buy shoes on Amazon, but still the shoe store has its importance. I think if I'm sure you're reading the news and you're seeing that all these big box stores are closing. You see that banks you just mentioned
Mhm.
are closing down branches. What they should be doing is closing one branch to move to a more relevant location. A lot of the planning should be based on location information, because if the demographics of the neighborhood changed and you're no longer serving those people,
Mm-hmm.
you should move your location to where it would serve people.
Absolutely.
So there are certain minorities that are not banked. You call them the unbanked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of bigger banks like Chase don't serve these people.
Mm-hmm.
So what should be in some of these neighborhoods, like in Asbury Park,
Mm-hmm.
instead should be like Constitution. I forget what they're called now. First Constitution
Mm-hmm.
is a community bank, and they
Right.
should be using geofencing to communicate to the unbanked. Even if you're an illegal alien,
Mm-hmm.
you should still put your money in a bank so you're not shot and robbed because
Right.
you're putting it under your mattress.
Right.
It belongs in a bank so that you can
Yeah.
have some sense of
Protected.
security.
Sure.
Yeah, and to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I see these locations shutting down, I just there's Stop and Shop is closing down at least 7 locations, including the one in Point.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea, but maybe they actually should have a smaller market space, meaning a smaller retail brick and mortar space to meet those needs.
And you see the Aldi's popping up all over the place now.
Yeah.
We got one on the Circle in
Yes.
Asbury. I just went there for the first time. There's something they're analyzing. What I need to understand is why we need so many gas stations and convenience stores. It's like every time you turn,
we love Wawa, but there's one everywhere.
Yeah, there's a Wawa every mile. There's another, they're putting a Hez gas station right there on the Circle where the Aldi is in Asbury.
That's insane.
Yeah,
and
so
actually
there's a
the planning
store.
for that is terrible.
It's horrible. I'm like, okay, so you go around the Circle, you got an Exxon, you got another food store. There's too much of the same stuff.
Right.
So it must tell you that like our behavior is to like pop into convenience stores, get gas anywhere we're driving. Just it's very interesting how like there seems to be so much of a need for something like that. We're
densely populated where we live enough that people don't want to turn their car around to go on the opposite side of the highway. So that's that thinking.
Yeah.
But it's on the township why that's location is so terrible. If you try to go through the Circle, it's literally impossible, and they don't let you. There's some side streets that you can, but it says don't use this side street to go through.
Yeah.
But that's starting to look like freehold. It's total terrible, terrible.
It's getting tough.
Terrible urban planning. But brick and mortar retail is never going to go away. Technically, we're in a brick and mortar place where people need to come in.
Yeah.
And any place that requires people coming in benefits from geofencing. It benefits specifically because you could find people who have an interest in what we offer.
Sure.
And we can then measure by GPS and satellite if they actually show up. So this is also the future of advertising. And I'm glad that a lot of other agencies don't have the high IQ to be able to pull this off, because it's a lot of data analytics that's involved in what we do. And you still have to create beautiful creatives. So you have to match beautiful creatives with a lot of data analysis. And I think most ad agencies are way behind on this, and it is the future. It's like a multi-billion-dollar future that most people don't really know about.
Right.
And it's invaluable to the real estate industry. It's invaluable to the mortgage industry. It's also invaluable to the legal industry. It's because people are not going to court anymore. Attorneys would often find their next client because they're defending someone that just got in a fight or DWI. So they're not showing up to court anymore. Everything's on Zoom.
Right.
So you have to use other technologies to find these people,
to drive the customer base. It makes sense. I think, I always talk about adapting, and I love your story because it's a story about that. It's like no industry is insulated from a fast change, right? And COVID proved that to a lot of different industries, right? That had to make fast moves. And so I just think, I think Albert Einstein says it, like your ability to change quickly is a measure of your intelligence in many ways. So I really kudos to you for being able to pivot and to say, I'm staying in advertising, I'm staying in this space, but I'm going to do it in a different way. And it sounds like a more impactful way too. So if you're a business owner out there, like, get in touch with, and I would love to talk to you about maybe doing some more educational stuff in the real estate space, because I think this is interesting. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Nicole. Great seeing you again. Love that we had a chance to talk. And
same here.
Hopefully some people will benefit from our conversation.
I hope so too. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. Have a great day.